In this section, we'll cover foundations, shallow and deep, including foundation concrete. Foundation types not permitted by DSA. Rubble stone walls per CBC 1807A13 are not permitted because whole California seismic design category or C, D, E, and F, and it's not permitted in these seismic design categories. Permanent wood foundation types are also not permitted per CBC 1807A14. However, relocatable one-story buildings which are under 2160 square feet are permitted. Anything larger than 2160 square feet need to be on permanent concrete footings, not wood foundations. Few more code sections not adopted by DSA when come to foundation concrete. DSA requires 3000 psi minimum concrete strength for all structural applications. If you have micro piles, you require 4000 minimum psi strength. If you have precast, pretension driven piles, 5000 psi minimum strength. Few more code sections to be aware of. CBC section 1808A81 defines concrete slump for deep foundation for to be 4-inch minimum, 8-inch maximum. CBC table 1808A82 provides minimum rebar covers, also referred to ACI 318-14 section 774. As you can see from the table, depending on where the foundation is being, type of foundation is being poured, how much minimum cover, concrete cover is required over rebar. Few more concrete sections to be aware of. CBC 1808A83 covers concrete to be free of foreign matter. CBC section 1808A84 on concrete protection. Concrete need to be protected from freezing during placement for 5 days. Concrete protection from flowing water after placement. CBC section 1808A85 concrete foundations against earth allowed where is shown on the approved drawings, and also should have minimum cover of 3 inches. Now we'll talk about shallow foundations. Let's start with what is not permitted by DSA. Obviously, prescriptive footings for light frame constructions not adopted by DSA or permitted by DSA under code section 1809A7. Any plain concrete footings not permitted by DSA under code section 1809A8. Masonry unit footings are not permitted by DSA, which are covered under CBC 1809A9. Any timber footings under code section CBC 1809A12 are not permitted by DSA. If foundations or footings are poured on a slope, well, slope cannot exceed more than 10%. If it's more than 10%, need to be stepped, and any step details should be in the contract plans or need to be approved by DSA. It's covered under code section 1809A.3. Also, if in a snow country, the footings need to extend below the frost line, and frost line usually defined by local building departments, local jurisdictions, and is covered under 1809A.5. If you have a stepped footing or contractor installing stepped footing, first look for DSA approved document, see if it has requirements. If none, then maximum step in a continuous footing need to be no more than 18-inch high. Maximum slope of a step, if you draw a line as you can see on the sketch, shall not be 1 to 2 slope. And also look at the geotechnical report. If there's any recommendation for step, need to be complied with. Here's an example of a trench undermining a footing column. Looking at it, it's pretty clear somebody didn't know what they were doing. So always look for details in your plans, approved DSA plans, how far a trench can be, where zone of influence is, how far above the bottom of footing a trench can start. Another example, when pipes pass through the footing or under the footings. If they pass under the footing, they need to be specifically designed. If they pass through the footing, there should be minimum 1-inch clearance all around. California Building Code section 1809A.14 covers some of these issues. So be familiar with that when you see pipes going into or going across underneath footings. Another example of pipe going across a footing. Look in the plans, see if there's any additional clearance requirements, sleeve requirements, or foam requirements in the plans. If the pipe is too close to the bottom of the footing, if details are missing, pick up the phone, talk to the design professional, look for more directions. Another example, as you can see, one of the pipe is wrapped, the other one is not wrapped yet, but it is required to be wrapped, and look for any other requirements in your plans. Example of concrete being placed and properly being vibrated on a large foundation floor. Next set of slides are for deep foundations. One of the code sections to be aware of is code section mislocation design requirement in the code 1810A313, where designer is required to design superstructure if any deep foundation is mislocated by 3 inches. It's a design requirement, not field tolerance. If you have anything more than allowed, which is usually 3 inches, you need to get DSA approval on that. Another code section on helical piles. Helical piles are usually used to resist vertical loads only, not horizontal loads. And California amendments required 2 load tests for each project, or 2% of production test piles. A few more code sections that are not adopted or permitted by DSA. Code section 1810A32 has exception in the IBC 1810-32212, which permits lower transverse reinforcement for deep foundations, is not adopted by DSA. So the contractor try to pull that one, be aware of this code section. Obviously, timber piles are not permitted by DSA per code section 1810A324. Code section 1810A33 identified many testing and installation requirements to verify load capacity for deep foundations. If you have piles on your project and has load test requirements, be familiar with code section 1810A3321 through 1810A332. There's a section on compression, section on tension and shear, test requirements for loading procedures you want to be familiar with. If you have piles on your project and piles are going to be installed other than pile hammer, you want to be familiar with this code section 1810A3312, and it mostly deals with helical screw anchor piles and push piles driven by hydraulically. It eliminates need for alternate design approval by expediting construction documents review. Next few slides are on helical anchor piles. As you can see in the table, it indicates service loads, ultimate loads, a lot of notes at the bottom of the table you want to be familiar with. A foundation plan view showing location of helical piles. You want to be well familiar with where they go, how they go. A detailed section showing location of helical pile and foundation reinforcement. So you want to be well familiar with how these things to be installed before project construction starts. Structural steel sheet piling covered under CBC 1810A3533. Want to be familiar with the amendment added requiring inspection, monitoring, and observation requirement to comply with CBC 1812A6 and 1812A7 for existing buildings when shorings are installed adjacent to them. Cast-in-place piles, site classes A through D under California Building Code 1810A39421 clarifies that reduction of 50% required spiral reinforcement or transverse reinforcement limited to buried portion of the pile. However, any portion of the pile above grade require 100% of spiral reinforcement as in ACI 318-14 section 18.7.5 for columns. If micropiles on your project, CBC 1810A310-4 section amendments added in the design provisions, no alternate design. Also for micropiles, since they take only vertical loads, no horizontal load, 2 minimum tests, and also 2% of the piles which are in production need to be tested for loads.